Welcome to this week's roundup of news and polls from Ipsos MORI. And this week we've seen a surge in concern about race relations in Britain in our long-running issues index, where we asked the British just to tell them what are the biggest problems facing the country, while coronavirus is at the top of the list again, but slowly dropping down as the disease hopefully diminishes in Britain. We've got more people than ever saying that race relations are a key issue facing the country, at 1 in 4 of the population, and if you're a black, Asian or minority ethnic Briton, that figure will be even higher at around 4 in 10. And that really reflects the wave of emotion unleashed by the racist murder of George Floyd by the police in America, and then the protests, of course, that followed it. We've also got this month rise in concern about the economy, which I'm afraid is going to be with us now, I think, for some time as a key anxiety. It's interesting to see that sort of surge in concern about race relations, because only 3 in 100 people in Britain now say you have to be white to be British, and concern about immigration is actually now at the lowest it's been this century, this ebbing away of anxiety about immigration started actually before the Brexit referendum, but of course has picked up pace ever since. So Britain and race relations are not fixed. We've got 3 in 10 black and Asian people getting worse treatment from public services, according to the population as a whole. There's still a lot of work to do, but I think it's interesting to see the conversations that we're now having about this, both at work and among and in society generally. And hopefully we will see more positive change as a result. When we take a step back from Britain and look at what's worrying the planet, in our regular 30-country study, what we can see, of course, is the top issue worldwide. Shooting in at number 1 is the coronavirus, even though it's starting to ebb. But sadly, as in the United Kingdom, we're now seeing a reversal of the long-term decline in anxiety about unemployment, for that to now be absolutely the second most important issue facing the planet. And our other hardy perennials of things like healthcare systems, and particular political corruption and financial corruption, which some months have been the number 1 issue facing the world in the last few years, have dropped down slightly. But coronavirus and unemployment, and this is going to be, I think, a perennial set of issues now for the next coming 18 months or so. In terms of the Black Lives Matter protests, we have looked at support for those or opposition to them around the planet. Opposition is highest in Russia, with 3 out of 10 people saying that they're opposed to them, but everywhere else the majority of people are in favour, including 79% in Britain, and similar numbers across Canada, Germany, Spain and Italy. So most people supportive and most people negative about Donald Trump's reaction. Only for some reason in India are people supportive of what Donald Trump says that he's done. Everywhere else, 8 out of 10 people opposed. And Donald Trump has, of course, seen America's reputation fall quite markedly internationally since he became president in 2016. In terms of the coronavirus's actual impact on us, of course, we've been looking at this in all sorts of elements in terms of people's lives. But one group we've looked at this month on behalf of the Centre for Ageing Better is what's happening to people aged 50 to 70. And as a 55-year-old, I was pretty interested in this. One of the things that we know is that in recessions of the sort that we're likely to enter with rising unemployment, not only will young people suffer, but also very likely will older people who find themselves out of work. And in this study, only a small minority of people are very confident among the 50-pluses that they will be able to find another job in future. And 46%, nearly half, say that their personal financial circumstances have actually got worse during lockdown, and only 6% say they've improved. So they aren't necessarily enjoying the increased savings that quite a lot of working people who've been able to start working remotely have enjoyed. So while we should worry about younger entrants to the job market and school leavers and people leaving university this summer, we should also perhaps worry about people at the other end of the spectrum, because it looks like they are going to have a tough time in the years ahead as well. If you're interested in how coronavirus plays out in terms of the polarisation of society, do have a look at this webinar. We've done some work looking in depth at our monthly financial research survey, the FRS, which looks at what people are doing with their money, who's saving, who's taking out loans meetings, etc. Do have a look at that. There's a recording you can watch there. We've also launched our first Politics and Society podcast. We're going to do these now every month. We started off by looking at Keir Starmer's prospects with Aisha Hazarika, who used to work for Ed Miliband, and also Alistair Campbell, who used to work for Tony Blair, of course, discussing Keir Starmer's ratings. He's currently about as popular as Tony Blair was in the mid-1990s, so he will be pleased with his start, but he's still behind the Prime Minister in terms when people are asked who would make the better Prime Minister. Boris Johnson is still ahead, so he's got some way to go. The election is years away, but we looked at the things that he needs to do, including Scotland. Much more in the podcast. Do have a listen. We've also looked at how consumers are feeling as shops reopen. Nearly over 4 out of 10 are saying they don't feel comfortable going back into shops, and only 1 in 5 think that shops are making a great deal of effort to keep people safe. And so this study is looking at exactly what matters to consumers as they start to think about going back to shops, what sort of health and safety issues are important, and we will be tracking these as Britain gradually unlocks. So the Consumer and Health and Safety Index, do look at that, see how it works for your industry. Overall, though, Britons are reasonably positive about their employers overall, and in a sense, because of furlough, employers have often been able to be relatively generous rather than sort of starting with mass redundancy programs as demand vanishes. 86% of people who are working at home say that remote working has been positive for them, and that doesn't bode well perhaps for people who are leasing office space, given that many staff seem to be quite happy staying at home for some time to come. And overall, British business gets a thumbs up from its staff, with 8 out of 10 saying it's adapting well to the current crisis, 3/4 saying it's doing a good job in terms of taking steps to secure the health and job security of employees. So more details on that, contact my colleague Ellie Shaw. All of the data that we gather on a regular basis, almost daily now that we're doing releases, is available here on our website, so do bookmark that page. And that's all for this week. I'll be back in touch, and enjoy the sunshine. Thank you. Bye-bye.